It's rare for a single episode of Welcome to Plathville to feel like it could rewrite the entire family's story. But this week's events were the kind that change everything. The cracks that have been quietly spreading through the Plath family for years are suddenly front and center. And this time, there's no pretending everything is fine. We saw trust torn apart, tempers flaring, and a return that nobody was ready for. In one episode, we went from quiet tension to full-on emotional chaos. And honestly, I'm still catching my breath. Hi friends, I'm Christine, and you're watching Inside Hollywood Couples. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and jump into the comments because I need to hear your take on what went down. Were you shocked? Or did you see this coming a mile away? In Season 7, Episode 2, 3 storylines clashed so dramatically that you could almost feel the air leave the room. First, Micah, the family's golden boy, the one so many saw as steady and loyal, dropped a bombshell about cheating that no one could have predicted. Then there was Ethan, whose simmering dislike for Zach boiled over in a way that felt personal, sharp, and impossible to ignore. And just when you thought it couldn't get any messier, Olivia stepped back into the picture, her presence alone stirring up all the unresolved history she shares with the Plaths. The weight of it all is heavy because these aren't small misunderstandings. These are the kind of moments that reopen old wounds, dredge up past betrayals, and make you question whether this family can ever truly be on the same page again. You could see it in the way people avoided eye contact, in the clipped tones of their voices, and in the way conversations seemed to trail off before anything real could be said. And as much as the cameras capture what's happening in the moment, the history make. As every word and every silence more loaded, this isn't just about a cheating scandal, a feud with a boyfriend, or a surprising return. It's about years of emotional tension finally catching fire. Micah has always been one of those Plath kids people see as the calm in the storm, the brother who somehow managed to steer clear of most of the family drama, focusing on his modeling career and new life away from Cairo. But in this episode, we saw a completely different side of him, one that not only shocked his siblings, but also had fans questioning how much they really know about him. The moment came without much warning. Micah sat there, speaking in that measured way he usually does, but the words hit like a punch to the gut. He admitted to cheating. And it wasn't delivered with the kind of deflection or excuses you sometimes hear in reality TV confessionals. He owned it, but the admission still landed heavy. For years, Micah has been the image of the charming, put-together son, the one who moved out, built his own life, and seemed to be avoiding the messy relationship patterns that have haunted the Plaths. This revelation cracked that image wide open. You could see the shift in the room. Mariah's face tightened. Ethan looked down like he didn't want to be part of this conversation, and even the more reserved family members had that frozen expression, the one where you can tell they're processing a million thoughts at once. It wasn't just about the cheating itself, it was the symbolism of it. This family has fought for years over values, trust, and morality, especially when it comes to love and commitment. And here was Micah, one of the siblings many believed had escaped the more damaging parts of their upbringing, admitting that he'd broken one of the very rules they'd all grown up with. From a commentary standpoint, what made this moment even more impactful was how Micah talked about it. He didn't minimize the hurt it caused. He also didn't hide behind blaming the relationship's problems or his own past. He seemed almost resigned, like he knew this would change how people saw him, but was ready to put it out there anyway. And that honesty, messy as it was, is rare for the Plaths, who have a long history of keeping their deeper truths behind closed doors. The cheating reveal also forced the audience to think about Micah's personal evolution. Over the seasons, he's gone from sheltered farm boy to someone living in Los Angeles, traveling, meeting new people, and dating outside the bubble of his upbringing. Fans have celebrated his independence, but that freedom clearly comes with its own pitfalls. The Micah who once talked about being cautious and valuing loyalty is now admitting to something that can completely shatter trust. And I have to say, in the middle of all this family tension, it almost felt like Micah's confession was a trigger point for everything else in the episode. The Plaths already walk a thin line with each other, Small disagreements can spiral quickly, so hearing that one of their own had stepped so far outside what they were taught only added to the emotional weight of the night. So the question is, will this be a temporary shadow over Micah's reputation, or will it follow him for the rest of the season? And for the family, is this just one more thing to quietly avoid discussing, or could it actually force some real conversations about what they expect from each other as adults living very different lives? If Micah's confession rattled the room, Ethan's attitude toward Zach practically lit it on fire. From the moment Zach's name came up, you could feel Ethan's energy change. It wasn't just mild discomfort. It was sharp, visible, and almost bristling. He didn't even try to hide how he felt, and that's what made this part of the episode so tense. We've seen Ethan in protective brother mode before, especially when it comes to Mariah. He has a history of stepping in when he thinks someone isn't good enough for her, or when he feels like she's being mistreated. But with Zach, it's different. There's no over-the-top blow-up. Instead, it's a steady, simmering dislike, the kind where every comment feels loaded and every glance carries an unspoken judgment. In S7E2, there's this undercurrent running through every scene they share, or even when Zach isn't present but his name is mentioned. Ethan's face tightens, his tone gets clipped, and he'll sometimes respond with these short, almost dismissive answers. You can tell he's not interested in bridging the gap, and for someone like Ethan, who can be slow to open up even with people he likes, this wall between him and Zach feels unmovable. The history matters here. In past seasons, Ethan's relationships with Mariah's boyfriends have ranged from distant to openly hostile, depending on how much he trusts them. With Zach, though, it doesn't seem to be about a single incident, at least not one shown on camera. It's more like a judgment that's been building quietly, perhaps from how Zach has handled himself with Mariah, or from lifestyle differences Ethan can't get past. Watching this, it's hard not to wonder if Ethan's reaction is rooted in genuine concern for Mariah's happiness, or if it's about something else entirely. Maybe it's the lingering frustration he's carried from his own marriage struggles with Olivia. Maybe seeing Zach makes him think of choices he wishes he'd made differently. Or maybe, and this is where the tension really deepens, it's about control. Because in this family, approval and loyalty aren't just given, they're earned, and Ethan doesn't laud like he's ready to give either to Zach. The other layer to this is how Mariah handles it. She's been through enough with her family's opinions about her personal life, and while she might not confront Ethan directly about his dislike, you can see the tension on her face when his disapproval is obvious. It puts her in that familiar Plath position, stuck between wanting to protect her relationship and not wanting to fracture the sibling bond further. For viewers, it's a fascinating dynamic to watch because Ethan isn't making a scene. He's just letting his feelings show in the most unfiltered way possible, and that almost makes it more cutting. It's one thing to yell or argue. It's another to silently broadcast that someone will never be welcome in your circle. And as much as this episode gives us in the moment, it also sets up the question, is this dislike something Ethan will soften on as the season goes on? Or are we looking at another long-term family divide? Because with the Plaths, grudges don't fade quickly. They calcify, and they can last for years. Just when the air in the room couldn't feel any heavier, Olivia walked back into the picture. And honestly, her very presence was enough to shift the entire mood. For years, Olivia's relationship with the Plaths has been a lightning rod for drama. From her rocky marriage to Ethan, to her open conflicts with Kim, to her eventual distance from the whole family. So seeing her return now, in the middle of all this chaos, felt almost surreal. The moment she appeared, it wasn't just about what she said. It was the body language, the silence between words, the way certain people avoided looking directly at her. Olivia has history here, and not the kind that gets smoothed over with a quick hug and a smile. This is the kind of history that leaves scars. Fans who have been watching since the early seasons remember how Olivia initially tried to connect with the family. She came in with openness, wanting to blend her life with Ethan's close-knit but deeply traditional upbringing. But it didn't take long for cracks to form. Disagreements over religion, parenting philosophies, boundaries. It all became part of the public storyline. By the time she distanced herself, it was clear those divides weren't going to heal overnight. So here in Season 7, Episode 2, her return feels loaded. There's curiosity, sure. Why now, and for what reason? But there's also tension, because every unresolved argument, every awkward holiday, every silent car ride is still in the air. You can sense it in Ethan most of all. His relationship with Olivia has been through separations, reconciliations, and more than a few tear-filled conversations. So when she's suddenly back in the frame, he's carrying not just the moment, but years of complicated emotions. For Kim and Barry, the layers run even deeper. Kim, in particular, has had a notoriously strained relationship with Olivia, one that has been played out in full view of the cameras. There's this unspoken question hanging in the air. Will they speak? Will they acknowledge the past? Or will they pretend, for the sake of the moment, that it's all water under the bridge? From my perspective, the most telling part of Olivia's return in this episode wasn't what anyone said. It was what they didn't say. The carefully chosen words, the quick changes of subject, the physical distance between people who used to be closer. It's a reminder that with the Plaths, silence can be just as loud as shouting. And while fans might be hoping for a big on-camera confrontation or a heartfelt reconciliation, this episode seems to hint at something else. A slow, cautious re-entry into the family's orbit. Olivia's here, yes, but the question is whether she's really back in a way that will change the family's future, or if this is just a temporary crossing of paths before everyone retreats to their corners again. By the time all three storylines had unfolded, it was impossible to look at this episode as just a set of separate events. Micah's confession, Ethan's quiet but sharp hostility toward Zach, and Olivia's tense reappearance. They weren't just coincidences happening in the same hour of television. They were threads in the same tangled web that's been building for years in the Plath family. The Plaths have always been about appearances, smiling family photos, carefully chosen words, and a kind of unity that feels almost rehearsed. But underneath, there's a constant push and pull over loyalty, control, and who gets to define what family means. And in S7E2, that undercurrent finally broke the surface. Micah's cheating didn't just challenge his own image, it struck at the family's long-held narrative about morality and values. It reminded everyone that no matter how much someone appears to have it together, mistakes can happen. And when they do, they ripple outward. That ripple hit Ethan in ways he didn't openly admit, but you could see it in his face. If trust is already fragile, watching another sibling break it doesn't make it any easier to extend grace in other parts of your life. Ethan's disdain for Zach, meanwhile, is about more than Zach himself. In a family where outside relationships have always been scrutinized, Zach represents another shift away from the approved path. Whether Ethan realizes it or not, his tension with Zach mirrors the very kind of judgment he's resented from others in the past. It's the cycle repeating itself, only with new names and faces. And then there's Olivia, the walking embodiment of unresolved history. Her return doesn't just affect Ethan, it ripples through the entire family dynamic. Her presence is a reminder of every past disagreement, every choice to take sides, every conversation where someone felt unheard. She's proof that no matter how far you try to step away, you're still part of this complicated unit, for better or worse. What makes this emotional web so striking is that no one seems willing to fully address it on camera. Instead, we see it in side glances, pauses, and the way conversations splinter off before they reach anything raw. It's a kind of emotional chess game. Everyone knows where the tension lies, but no one wants to be the one to tip the board over. And yet, even with all the avoidance, these three storylines connect in one clear truth. This family is at a crossroads. They can either keep circling the same patterns, letting resentment calcify into permanent distance, or they can start doing the hard work of actually talking about what's broken. The question is, will they? If there's one thing this episode proved, it's that in the Plath family, the past is never really the past. Every look, every awkward pause, every half-finished sentence is built on years of history. Some of it shared openly, and some of it carried in silence. Micah's cheating reveal wasn't just about a mistake in his love life. It was about the image the family has tried to maintain, and how quickly that image can crack. Ethan's coldness toward Zach wasn't just a personality clash. It was about what happens when old grudges and unspoken judgments shape how you see someone before you even give them a chance. And Olivia's return wasn't just a cameo. It was the spark that brought all the unfinished business back into the room. Watching it all unfold, you can't help but feel that these people are balancing on a very thin wire. One wrong move, one unfiltered comment, one more betrayal, and the whole structure could collapse. At the same time, there's this tiny part of you, maybe the part that's watched from the beginning, that still hopes they'll find some way to talk honestly, to stop repeating the same cycles, and to prove that family can survive even the messiest of seasons. But after this episode, it's hard to imagine how they get there without some very uncomfortable truths being said out loud. And if the past is any indicator, those conversations aren't coming easily. Which means the rest of this season might not just be about what happens. It might be about who's willing to stay in the room when things finally get real. So now I'm turning it over to you. Do you think Micah's honesty will help him rebuild trust, or has he crossed a line that can't be repaired? Is Ethan justified in shutting Zach out, or is he holding on to a judgment that's only going to make things worse? And with Olivia back, are we looking at a step toward healing or the start of a brand new round of battles? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to Inside Hollywood Couples so you don't miss the next breakdown. This season is just getting started. And if episode 2 is any sign, the biggest shocks are still to come.